She had known love once, real love, the kind that made her forget the coldness of castle stones and the weight of royal expectation. But love in a palace was never simple, never safe, and never without a price that someone would have to pay. The water around her was warm now, warmer than it had been in life, and the flowers drifted past her face like the dreams she had once dared to dream when the world seemed full of possibility. The marriage had been secret, performed by a priest who owed Hamlet more loyalty than he owed the crown. They had spoken their vows in whispered Latin while dawn crept through stained glass windows, painting their faces in colors that seemed to promise a future neither of them would live to see. She had worn white flowers in her hair that morning, just as she wore them now in the water, though these blooms carried a different meaning, held a different weight, spoke of endings rather than beginnings. For 3 months they had managed to keep their secret, stealing moments between his lessons in statecraft and her duties as a lady of the court. They would meet in hidden alcoves, exchange glances across crowded rooms, and dream of a time when they could love openly, when the kingdom would accept what their hearts had already decided. But kingdoms rarely bend to accommodate love, especially when that love threatens the delicate balance of power that keeps thrones stable and dynasties intact. The first sign of trouble had come when Hamlet's behavior began to change, when his gentle madness became something harder, more focused, more dangerous. She watched him transform from the man who wrote her poetry into someone who spoke of revenge and justice, with eyes that burned like winter stars. The court began to whisper about his strange moods, his cryptic speeches, his growing obsession with his father's death, and she realized that her husband was walking a path that would lead either to a crown or to a grave. Then came the morning when she woke feeling different, when her body whispered secrets that her mind was afraid to acknowledge. The confirmation came 3 weeks later from a wise woman in the village, a woman who knew herbs and remedies and the signs that life leaves on a woman's body. She was carrying Hamlet's child, carrying the future heir to a throne that might never exist, carrying hope and terror in equal measure beneath her heart. The news should have brought joy, should have been shared in celebration and anticipation. Instead, it became another secret to carry, another weight to bear in a castle where secrets had a way of becoming weapons in the wrong hands. She understood immediately what this child would mean to Hamlet's enemies: leverage, a hostage, a way to control the prince's actions or destroy his reputation entirely. Royal bastards were either killed or kept as tools for future manipulation, and she would not allow her child to become either. When she told Hamlet, she watched his face cycle through wonder, joy, terror, and finally a resignation that broke her heart. He held her that night as if she might dissolve at dawn, whispering plans that grew more desperate with each passing hour. They spoke of running away, of abandoning everything for a simple life in some distant village where no one knew their names or cared about their bloodlines. But morning brought reality, brought the weight of duty and the impossibility of escape for a prince whose every movement was watched, whose absence would be noted within hours. The solution came to her slowly, crystallizing over days of careful thought and sleepless nights. It was not the solution she wanted, but it was the only one that would save both Hamlet and their child. She would have to disappear, but not in a way that would bring suspicion down on him. She would have to become someone else's tragedy, someone else's failure, so that he could continue his dangerous game without the added burden of protecting her and their unborn child. The plan required her to become what the court already suspected her to be, a young woman driven to madness by love and loss. She began to let her behavior slip, to speak in riddles, to respond to questions with fragments of songs and poetry that made less sense each day. The court began to whisper about poor Ophelia, driven mad by her prince's rejection, by the violent death of her father, by the weight of tragedies too great for such a delicate mind to bear. They pitied her, which made them stop watching her so carefully, stop questioning her movements or her purpose. The harder part was convincing Hamlet that her madness was real, that she had truly broken under the pressure of their circumstances. She had to endure his genuine anguish as he watched what he believed was her descent into actual insanity, had to maintain the performance, even when she saw the guilt and pain in his eyes. But it was necessary. If he believed her truly lost to madness, he would grieve and move forward with his plans, rather than trying to save her and risking everything they had worked to protect. The morning of her supposed death, she had already arranged everything. the loyal servant who would spirit her away to safety, the midwife in a distant village who would help her through the birth, the small cottage where she could live quietly until it was safe to reveal the truth. She walked to the river wearing her finest dress, carrying flowers like a maiden preparing for a festival, and for a moment she allowed herself to dream of the reunion that would come someday, when Hamlet's battles were won and their child could inherit a peaceful kingdom. But as she stood by the water's edge, distributing flowers according to their meanings in the old language of symbols, she realized that she was not alone. The queen's guards had been following her, had been watching her more carefully than she had realized. They suspected something, perhaps not the truth, but enough to make her original plan impossible. In that moment, she understood that there would be no escape, no cottage in the countryside, no quiet life with her child. The choice became clear with brutal simplicity. She could allow herself to be captured, interrogated, forced to reveal the secret that would destroy both Hamlet and their child, or she could ensure that the secret died with her. The water was cold when she entered it, but it grew warmer as she sank deeper, as if the river itself understood the sacrifice being made and chose to grant her this small mercy in her final moments. The flowers followed her down, creating a beautiful tableau that the world would remember as the tragic madness of a young woman who loved too deeply. But she knew better, even as the water filled her lungs and her vision began to fade. This was not madness. This was the clearest, most rational decision she had ever made. She was saving the only two people in the world who mattered to her, ensuring that one day, somewhere, somehow, their love would have meaning even if she was not there to witness it. The painting would remember her this way forever, floating among flowers like a maiden in a fairy tale, beautiful in death, romantic in tragedy. But the artist could never have known the weight of purpose that pulled her down, could never have captured the fierce love that made her sacrifice seem not like surrender, but like the greatest victory of her young life. In the water, surrounded by blooms that spoke of memory and love and hope, she found the only kind of freedom her world would ever allow her to possess.